innovación abierta y tecnologías emergentes, nuevos paradigmas de la PI. Enrique Shadah, Presidente, Expert Collective.
President, Expert Collective Cooperative, US. Chijane, Partner, Cikato, Abogados, Uruguay. Facilitator, Ximena, Souza. Partner, Osterling, Attorneys, Peru.
Solo nos habilitan el sonido.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están?
Hello, thank you for coming. It's not the best time of the day, but this panel will be really fun. We will talk about innovation and emerging technologies, and especially paradigms that have to do with intellectual property. And we have Diego and Enrique. We will start with Diego because he will explain. We were talking and to give a small introduction on open innovation and new technologies and how this affects the new challenges of intellectual property. What we want to know, Diego, is what is the relevance of new technologies in open innovation? Well, thank you. New technologies allow to disseminate knowledge in global transmission of knowledge and huge generation of knowledge. Three medular technologies. We have artificial intelligence that, as we all know, allows to analyze millions of data pieces based on this forecast analysis and deep analysis. AI allowed to learn from their own learning and get results that people could not achieve because of the capacity to analyze millions of data points. And the other vital technology in terms of innovation is the Internet of Things that goes around machinery and smart sensors that communicate with each other and communicate with the Internet. This allows to have a synergy between the online world and the real world. For example, there are smart sensors that are applied in medicine, placed in patients, and these smart sensors are constantly transmitting data in real time so that the AI system analyzes it and give prediction conclusions on where this personalized medicine should go. Lastly, blockchain technology that constitutes a blockchain. It's a way to transmit that is safe data through the internet. And the blockchain technology is some sort of a big database where you find all the data circulating. It is decentralized and non-controlled by any entity, and it works through a blockchain. Data that goes around in the internet is encrypted to the previous data, and this is encrypted to the next data. This generates security and guarantee in the circulation of information. These three technologies are the base of the Web 4.0 that is coming, that allows for a constant exchange of information from the real world with the virtual world and all the way around. For example, companies that put a new product to the market, they don't need to put it in the market and see and then commercialize it directly. They can generate a prototype that is tested by the consumer. They generate data. This data go to the AI system, and we can achieve proven technology. This generates a lot of knowledge dissemination and technology with certainty. It's not a technology that has to be tested while it's in the market, but it is born with the certainty that it complies with the requirements and needs of consumers, and in the same line of innovation. Open innovation, is it incompatible with the regime of patents? And what is related to compatibility of the regime of open innovation and patents? As it happens when we follow a line of knowledge or legal positioning, philosophical positioning, we go to the extremes. This pure system, this causes that technology circulates freely and that there is no patent rights or intellectual property rights that can hamper technical progress. So based on this conception, there is a clear opposition between open innovation and the intellectual property regime. The open access systems or open science, they are a reaction to author rights. And when we talk about open innovation, you question the reason of being of the patent system. It's that the patent system doesn't comply with the traditional role. It was to incentivize and disseminate knowledge. It is said that it is not necessary to incentivize this through patents because it has been tested in other technologies that without requiring intellectual property, the technological progress happens anyway, and the example is the case of the free software and open data, where the improvement of the software is done freely in the market by users and the companies, and all this technological activity, development activity is of a public domain. And about the analysis of open innovation, it's a substitute mechanism of patent rights, and it is said that the concept that the patent is a mechanism to generate a dissemination of innovation of technique is not covered or is not that necessary, because if a company creates a new product, the placement of the product in the market will generate a dissemination of technology, of knowledge. So the innovator should not have a monopoly. But on the other sense, it is said that sometimes the patent also keeps all the necessary information, and that often those who have the patents, they keep specific information that they will use once the expiration of the patent happens in the market.
So on this very basis, open innovation is taken into consideration. Innovation where technology is actually distributed without patented regimes, with IP regimes, as a primary mechanism of innovation that must exist throughout society. And it's based on the idea of human right as access to the human right of access technology, and that is, for example, access to medicine. And that affects access to medicine because the monopoly held by a pharmaceutical company over a new formula can affect that right. For example, during the pandemic and coronavirus, that generated access to an exclusion of the right to patents in 2022. So based on that, the patent and intellectual property right is visibilized as an obstacle to the progress of open technology, but nothing further from the truth. The patent, in this case, actually generates limits in what has to do with the group of ventures that come together to create a result, and that is, great barriers amongst neighbors. That is the case maybe of Pfizer, Glauco, and Sioni, a Japanese company that was created to set up a technological company linked to AIDS research. These three companies actually share reciprocal licensing, but each of these have made it very clear what is the limit until how far can a person go and can't go. So if of course, and if the boundaries are clear, then it can be determined how far the things can be shared. There's also a biosocial a company that has led to and it is linked to research as far as vegetable biotechnology. So the labs that use these patents, if they manage to achieve certain modification, they're going to have to necessarily leave these innovations in the public domain. However, if they achieve a new product, then the system allows for patent to do the innovative lab. And why is this? Because this have all these amount of technologies of innovation, of sectors where the economic investment is huge. So if you can't ensure the investor that you're going to have the monopoly to pretty much commercialize this, then it frustrates them. And so it's not true that the that intellectual property law has changed from its beginnings in Venice, where their intent was to promote trade, and it continues to exist. So you have a lab that is analyzing whether or not they should start to promote a biological product, and they have to spend millions in analysis, preclinical trials and clinical trials before they can actually go into the market. If you don't allow them to keep certain level of exclusiveness that will allow them to recover their money, then they won't invest. And so patents are an excellent way to ensure technological progress, but these patents necessarily have to be the boundaries that should guide any person participating in open innovation. And the most successful cases of new creations come out from the environment of shared open innovation with intellectual property rights. Now, what can be said about this is that if the current patent system clearly converges with the open innovation, and that's how we can definitely say that the patent system, the way it's regulated today, it can be an obstacle in what pertains the regulatory aspect. For example, in a system where innovation have move very quickly, and sometimes innovation can exist for a year in the market because that technology is easily replaceable. And then you have a patent pool publish 18 months later and touch this into the public. This can be too much time. Same thing when you have patents with excessive secrecy. Another thing about the patent system is that if the patent system is based on the right of exclusion, but not in what the patent does to promote, where you have to incentivize the regulation for transfer technology and then try to establish regulations that will allow for the parties to really set clear rules as far as what pertains inserting themselves in an innovation regime. And even though it's true that parties contractually do the autonomy of will, ordinarily will have all of these elements to find a solution to the innovation agreements. We mustn't forget that these agreements for innovation can be object of regulations that can be applied in multiple jurisdictions, where a lot of times private international law does not admit the autonomy of will. And so it is basic that patent law keeps that convergence with the right of exclusion, but also places emphasis on the right of inclusion. Patent law should also incentivize patent trolls and should indeed use mechanisms so that the patents that are not being used and that are exclusively used as a obstacle mechanism. So these patents cannot hinder the advance of technology, and also patent the offices should conduct more accelerated and in-depth analysis. Technology advances very quickly, and so a patent can't be continue to take 4 or 5 years, and include views that a lot of times are not technical, but rather based on the ignorance of the person doing the review. And basically, pretty much every innovator, when they come in, can gather some scientific knowledge up to how far they've advanced. All of these changes that must take place, and that patent system actually help to move forward in an open innovation system. So to draw a conclusion, we can't obliterate the patent system because it's globally useful, it's internationally acknowledged. Open innovation is incentivized by the patent system because patents that converge in open innovation set clear limits between parties acting within an open innovation system. Lastly, yes, the patent system should begin to adapt to this new modality of innovation, which is incredibly beneficial, but this patent system doesn't converge as far as scientific dissemination to facilitate open innovation. Great, thank you, Diego. Enrique, as far as what Diego mentioned, can you share what is disruptive technology and how do you identify this? Thank you for that very difficult question, by the way. So disruption depends on who is experiencing it. And so technology is disruptive, and I think Clayton Christensen was the one who coined the term. And that is when it solves something in the preamble or under the shadow of an existing practice. And so that solution works and works well, but it's not completely and utterly defined, and so it takes over. So what do you think disruptive technology is for everyone in this audience? It's the next best work predictor. So the analysis of a probability, you have a string that is adapted to a context, and that 5 years ago, nobody used it. Nobody really paid attention to it up until certain elements made it possible or feasible to actually determine certain algorithms that were necessary for certain tasks. And so now all of the legal industry is really changing, being disrupted, right? Because of AI. But I just wanted to emphasize the previous panel. I loved it so much because why do people disrupt? Why does this happen? And it is based on what you mentioned on Diego. People conduct research and chases after certain goals, through their own creativity, and that leads to identifying or finding things that can be disruptive or not. And you never know if it's going to be disruptive or not. It's really random. Nobody really knew that AI was going to launch the way it did or take off the way it did. And so I'd like to speak of a company that I used to work with um, as far as open innovation, an European company called Ferrovial in MIT. But let me, I don't know if anybody had any other questions. No, the last one was if you can share your experience and practical cases in which emerging technologies are linked to open. Well, the context of Ferrovial is interesting. Who knows Ferrovial? Has anybody heard of it? Nobody? Nope. So introduce us. Ferrovial is a company, mainly Spanish. Now they're in the Netherlands. It's public, but a third of the company actually continues to be private, meaning the owners are the funders, and he's this Spanishman funded. He has this company has existed for over 100 years and has a market cap of $30 billion or euros. I don't know. It's large. This is a huge company. Has projects anywhere and everywhere in the world, and he graduated from MIT. And so, about 10 years ago, I don't know, 12 years ago, he decided that the company needed to restructure the way in which they did things. And so he contacted MIT and they said, okay, let's do this energy initiative. And they promote, and MIT promotes understanding from different energy sources within the campus. And so this brings in a industrial consortium with different educational partners to conduct basic research and international research in every area in energy. So I worked with Ferrofiat to identify teachers, researchers that were interested in working with the industry in a pre-competitive state to identify projects that may have a disruptive impact within their operational environment, which entails infrastructure, water, airports, road access, and construction. And in these four areas, they owned the Heathrow Airport in UK, and they sold it, and so they sold cities thing. But before selling city management, we did several projects. So was able to identify several projects, several professors pertaining potential disruption, and so. So we're talking about we had a project called City Scanner, and the student did so you did city scan. They scanned buildings to figure out where energy was being lost, and that's what they were offering the city, and they as Ferrovial they wanted to offer the city the service and the city management service. This is an example, and so and that was the existence. So to create the service in that moment, so in order to do this, you have to have open innovation, the director of open innovation, and it also needs this counterpart to ensure the institution that any project used outside can connect and work within the operation. So that led to my contact to have and so as a catcher of open innovation from outside in, and then when it reaches the border and the boundary of the company, there's an internal person that knows how to handle and manage every single different group to ensure that there are people who are willing to sabotage or don't have the incentives to. Another example with Ferrovial was the issue of tunnels. They do tunnels, road access, construction. There's some issues with vibration that were not understood, so they created a project. The pre-soccer focused on vibration to really understand ground pactation, and this was developed. And I don't know how developed this is, but there is. I mean, it's not only supply technology to create a product and share it, but the development of knowledge has been such that that it's managed to increase the capacity, the intellectual capacity of the firm. And so, if you're going to choose a new so if you want to actually do with the compact soils and you're going to buy, for example, you do soil compaction and and you're going to buy a backhoe, then you know and you can understand vibration. Okay, so what do you do when you're going to be truly disruptive, and how to I think disruption, what does it do? And one of the things that I've been doing with MIT is the process that the previous panelists made about lean startup is based on customer discovery, and it's to understand what happens in the border outside your organization, meaning how do you know where something is going to disrupt something else? You have to first understand what is what you're doing now, because if you understand what is being done now, they can begin to visualize the potential. How can another technology potentially disrupt anything else that is being done? You can't do this all the time because you can really forecast. That is the definition of forecast. You don't know where it comes from, but if you understand well the case study of your client, your counterpart, whatever it is that you are working or the area you're working on, and you map it well, and you're working on research projects in the lab or whatever, then you're going to begin to connect the dots. And so the art of connecting the dots and delaying the borders and perimeters where you believe there's an action, a potential for disruption. So if you have that ability within your firm, within your own organization, of providing a lot more flexibility, so when you find something that works, then you can provide it the context that you want within the space that you've identified. Thank you. Diego, as far as open innovation, in your experience, can you please tell me how you have developed this? Open innovation, anything pertaining to Uruguay, there is a very large collab between universities and private capitals. So and these synergies that are taking place, there is obviously, a series of contracts that promote legal regulation, and what is being regulated, as a matter of fact, is the progress, the innovation, who these results are going to belong to, if it's going to exist, and if it's going to be shared property, if it's going to belong to the university, but they're going to license it to the company. So there has to be this whole legal universe, and in this case, private companies generally have their everything figured out, and then they mention the existence of this contract, and the university begins to ask around about this particular content. And so this is prepared by the a private company. You have economic flow, investment, and an investment that is provided to the university. Also, in that environment of open innovation, the state can actually participate. The state can also provide economic contributions to the effects where this innovation is going to prosper. And so open innovation to the state, practically, if is being developed in every aspect of the industry. There's an acknowledgement by the companies that one can no longer provide closed innovation or and keep the secret within or behind the company doors. What companies are doing now is that technology, knowledge, research, all the legal and technological tools such as AI, um, smart sensors, they are continuously issuing data and knowledge on behalf of innovation itself. And a single company may not have sufficient elements to understand these variables. So every single time projects become more complex and products become more complex and they require more expertise. And in this expertise, it is important to understand that and you have to provide a biological product and require a large amount of specialists or experts. And these are going to be companies linked to the genetic sector, to the chemical, biological sectors, and you're going to produce a large level of synergy amongst all of these companies that are going to generate a system of open innovation. Exclusively closed amongst them in the sense that all innovation will remain in the environment of the companies that exist. And you can contractually, you can regulate what results will belong to who, and that is an issue of will's autonomy. But this will be regulated in case of there being positive results that require patenting. Then that sets a clear legal regulation. So this is a possibility of being on alone within the market. Every single time, you require more synergy of the knowledge, the synergy of the technology. Huawei, the mobile phone company, is betting on open innovation. A large part of their mobile phones or their product are produced in other companies, and so. You have Eli Delhi, the U.S. lab, does calls for open innovation so that different researchers and different companies, SMEs, biotechnology SMEs, participate in an agreement aimed at increasing synergy and results. And so, as I said at the very beginning, open innovation does not stand against the patent system. Open innovation is an excellent tool to promote patent-able technology, and so that if you start issuing patents that, or you have stakeholders that intervene in the complex of this open innovation, it's going to set clear limits and clear rules of the game. To this date, open innovation, there are examples of every single kind. In every activity. So the cases that are set as examples are, for example, those linked to software, free software and open code. And what was the intent? Well, it's to promote that market. So through open innovation, we go from a first right, which is licensed, and through what is called a viral license. That license is provided to every user, but every one of the users that improve this technology are subject to these viral licensing, and all of the others are licensed and every other participant also is licensed. For example, in the case of innovation for electric mobility, Tesla opened its patents and allowed for licensing all of its patents under the condition that if this license was used, they should not generate any innovation against Tesla. What was the intent behind Tesla releasing their patents is to generate a promotion of the electrical market. And definitely, if the electric market takes off, Tesla wins on the other hand, because the fight of the electric market is against the fuel use market. And if you openly develop the electrical market without patent, the final benefit for that particular sector of technology is going to be a greater level of knowledge, and companies are going to be able to sell their products as collateral products that are linked to electrical technology. And so now open innovation is a reality that is covered in every single aspect, from software, medical technologies, pharmaceutical products, and any level of technology. Companies seeing the need for innovation as innovation that needs to be shared, and that there has to be a convergence of efforts. And the closed industry model is gone, and this will really depend on every case and every technology. A lot of times, closed investment is necessary in certain areas because whomever innovates has a larger economic investment, and the only certainty is to refrain from opening this innovation and then to search the patent and exclusivity. I'd like to add something. One of the things that I was interested about in the previous panel is the issue of education and how emerging industries are the ones responsible to create new jobs. And I believe open innovation is a very important issue. And I think a lot of larger corporations talk about open innovation, but what they're really doing is not innovating, but rather, a lot of times at least, is just increasing efficiency and reducing cost. And that is, often, and it just happens and happens. And a disruptive negotiation in a startup requires a lot of focus, a lot of effort, and so that's why there has to be a large portfolio of emerging companies in any economy, and particularly those who are younger, and that's going to create the industry park that employs people, and it's really going to recycle itself. And what's next is disruptive. Nobody knows. But what you do know is that if you're going to begin a new project, you need to have a focus where you have a hook where the market will respond. And there's something that's there and that's working. Support emerging projects within the framework of open innovation. You can accelerate the startup process because you no longer have to build the team, the equipment. You don't have to use, expensive equipment. You can use somebody else's, like a larger corporation's equipment, and you have to use all these resources that may already exist and that are available. And that really accelerates the disruption of the companies that may be loaning the equipment to you. But that is key because large companies love, here's my logo, I'm going to help you with innovation. And undoubtedly and repeatedly, this does not lead to generation of employment, but rather it leads to tax cuts and I won't say stagnation, where the workforce doesn't have room to grow. That needs to be combined with the strong strategies from new companies, new corporations. That what you're saying about cutting cost, that is the essence of open innovation, and that's where the company acknowledges that it doesn't have an expertise in a specific area, and it can't put together a team, doesn't have a qualified workers, and to change this or to bring the company up to date from within would have an enormous cost. So you grow outside. You don't bring it from the inside out, but rather you go to other companies that have a great level of expertise in other areas, and it grows towards the outside. And ordinarily, a primary company takes advantage of underlying and precise technology. What this does is it transfers funds to these companies. The companies that are larger have the possibility of buying these companies as maybe Google, IBM. They buy when they know that this technology doesn't exist, and you buy the company, but without recurring to an increase in terminology through. So this is really useful, when you work with licensing. I license that technology, so you may do research on it, so you can provide its expertise, and that'll help me improve my product, and that is a basic tool for competitiveness because it allows me to grow towards the outside and accelerate the technology generation process and to generate new technologies. Meanwhile, that I'm not in the capacity to develop in my company. I'll give you an example. We have these three labs and they competitive against each other, Pfizer, Laxo, and a Japanese lab called Xiaomi. These three companies
Se un-
got together, created a company called PIP, and the three companies, they had all the intellectual property of all of them to create with the expertise of every lab a company that is independent, that generates technology and biological products, and especially that sticks to the study of medicines against HIV and other rare diseases. And it's three labs, competitors who could have been killing each other, but there is open innovation, and this is the recognition of your own disabilities, so that in a world that is growing fast and with information that is growing in a very fast pace, using these tools for a synergy and generate technology that is not obsolete at that time you put it in the market, because this expertise, every company has experience in the placement of their products. So if they're going to create products that are clearly going to have a safe placement in the market, and it depends on the dissemination curve of technology, because, for example, Intel Capital, when they were Intel, they funded companies that would create apps that are going to use their chips. So this technology dissemination, this shows how open innovation helps potentiating your own future. And a final thing that I had to say related to, do we have time? Related to denial of a patent system as a legal tool and drive for innovation, is that there is a paradox in the market. And often the system, intellectual property system itself, does not achieve innovation in certain sectors of the market. For example, in pharmaceutical terms, it happens with two things. Orphan medicines that treat unusual diseases that have an average of one person in 100,000 inhabitants. It's an ambit of activity where the lab, they don't have the incentive to innovate, because they will not have a market big enough to get a return on their investment. And we have the market of antibiotics. They fight bacteria, but it happens that bacteria, they mutate. There is a recombination of DNA where the bacteria starts to react against the antibacterial, and it mutates to resistant bacteria. In the lab that invests in the creating an antibiotic, they don't have a market quota ensured, because the doctors will not prescribe this antibiotic, and if it is prescribed, is for some amount of time in the short term that this antibiotic is taken by the person. So these two markets, there are these orphan medicines and antibiotics. Up to now, they don't have research. The patent system in itself is not enough to stimulate innovation. And what is being done, they are adding more incentive systems to labs, tax ways, extension of the patents from 20 years to 25 to 30 years. And the third solution in the European Union is to use patents. I have the patent of an antibiotic that does not allow me to return investment, but I can use it for another product that generates this. And so these cases show the importance of patents as a drive for innovation, and how the patent is not enough sometimes, and the legal system, they have to resort to other mechanisms so that innovation takes place in these areas. Companies, societies, states, when we talk about innovators, we normally consider the existence of a monopoly and big companies that do not allow for access to medicines. But if we see who are the companies with highest value, are technological companies and companies related to e-commerce. So when we ask ourselves about the need of an incentive for companies, especially laboratories that produce new medicines, we have to consider where do states want to generate investment. And before we question private investors, the states should ask themselves what economic investments they make in education and in research. Thank you, Diego. And following that line, what is the role of intellectual property in innovation? What is the role of intellectual property in innovation? The first thing is the importance of intellectual property as a limit or clear determination of this relationship between neighbors. If there are three big labs that unite, such as Glaxo, Pfizer, and they have to have clarity in the rules of engagement as to how far they will go and what is their contribution going to be. And this comes from a patent document where it is clear what are the rights that they have. So the companies will be more willing to do free or open investment when they have an open investment without intellectual property generates risks of filtrations or leakages of innovations created. If I am in an open innovation system, at any point I can go and take advantage of an innovation to go to the private system. If I use open innovation with limitations of intellectual property, with reciprocated licenses and viral licenses, where all innovations generated by a lab or a technological producer will return in innovation, there is a mechanism with a lot of certainty, with a lot of legal certainty, and with a lot of synergy to openly innovate and generate new technology. Thank you, Diego. Enrique, do you have any other case that you could share in terms of open innovation? Yes. This is a case of Ferrovial, where they were interested in concrete pavement for roads, and discussing with a professor that created concrete sustainability node, which is the node where they study concrete. He started a project to understand how can they use existing technology to monitor the quality of the roads, because Ferrovial is the owner of roads, one in Texas and one in the East Coast in the US and in Europe. And the expense due to vibrations of the cars and the expense in the repaving, the expense is huge. So he started this initiative, but he had some projects that were not about materials, but signs of vibrations, etc. So they created a project that used a phone to monitor consistently the quality of the pavement. Any person who had the app could do it using the sensors of the phone. You open the app, you put it in the car, and the software captures movement, 3D movement, and it sends it to the cloud and it is analyzed. So this was a project that started not with the industry came with a need, and this was like readdressing technology, something that was not clear where to apply it. They brought it to the creation of the project. This company now has the pilot project to study how they can improve infrastructure with a low cost, leveraging on existing technology, telephones, cars who are on the road every day. So thank you both, and I don't know if someone in the public has a question. Thank you, and the depth of the discussion has been great. I would like to ask if you know about experiences where, besides the attributes described of open innovation, there are success cases of open innovation with linking communities, things that a company wants to undertake. For example, a fishing company connect with the community of artisan fishermen to resolve specific problems where you don't necessarily have the latest technology, but they can invent simple things, and there is a characteristic of connecting with the community that you are trying to influence. It's from the linking or connecting with the territory point of view. There is an example. This is an example of how the university is key to open innovation, because it's the place, the center, the focal point where you can have an open discussion about what you are doing and there are no repercussions. So a person from the Dominican Republic was very interested in sargassum, and there was a professor, very crazy professor, genius, but he is interested in opening everything he does, and through his talks and website, this person came to the professor and they developed a technology called LCM, Littoral Collection Module, which uses the fishing boats as vehicles to put this invention that has to nets to collect sargassum, and this was developed with this professor. They did a prototype and they tested it, and it is in production. It's a company called SOS Carbon, and I can explain it more in detail, but the point is that the objective was to use existing resources in local communities. And so you have fishermen, they take the six-pack after not getting fish, but instead of that, they can put the nets in their boats, and they get paid for cleaning. And in one day, they can collect more sargassum than a machine that it costs $1 million in a month using their boats and changing the nets, because it's like a filter, but it's a big filter. and you put it in 10 minutes. You don't have to modify the boat. And the nets you collect, they are made of nylon. You process them and you put a new nets. There are two big examples. The one I mentioned about the Hawaii company that at some point, in order to grow, they understood that they needed to resort to acquisition of the products to conform the acquisition of self products to create the cell phone technology and compete with monsters such as Samsung, Apple, and so on. And what they did is to open up, use the open innovation system. They called the spare part salespeople, the complex spare parts chips or software, and they created an innovation system where they assure that they would license their patents so that they would see what was required so that they could adapt their products that could be a patent for these self-producers. Even some small software developers would intervene, and this is an open process, and those vendors who could be a competition, these vendors also sold to Samsung this technology, and so he created a closed open innovation system to create this innovation. And there is a very particular case in Hawaii. Hawaii, well, surf is a sport that people have in their blood, and innovation in terms of surf is moving forward. And when I talked about technological tools to generate innovation, I talked about smart sensors. All kinds of activities are increasingly having smart sensors, and surfers, they have smart sensors that determine the movements made and the size of the wave. A lot of data gathered, and they are analyzed by AI so that they generate products, quality products to have more success in the sports at the time of surfing. So in Hawaii, there is an open innovation system, all companies participating in the creation of products related to software and to surf, and all the sports people of Hawaii, they have an open innovation system where all technological progress is shared with everyone. So the companies who sold technology, they partner with the sports people to generate technological progress quickly and for the benefit of increasing efficiency in surf. And I have a case. A software was developed to determine insurance company. They had to work with different mines in the Peru mountain range, and they wanted to count workers and the tests that they would take because of the type of minerals. They had copper and zinc, and these tests demanded by the law and because of the health of workers, because one was open sky. And for this analysis, there is a software. And from Lima, they could have all the information, and then the insurance company would have the information of all the workers, all the data. And it's been 2 years, and they are doing really well. And they work with the communities of the mining areas to develop that. There's a group in MIT, if you're interested. It's called B Lab, Development Lab, and they are focused on developing technologies with communities, especially in countries with little resources. And cow dung, they make bricks, to put them in the kitchen, not inside the house, but as a source of energy. But it's a simple manufacturing process. Instead of having that cow dung everywhere, they create bricks and they distribute them. This is an example. Thank you. One of the oldest example in open innovation, that is before the explosion of internet and these technologies, was at the beginning of the industrial revolution in England. The companies at that time, they wanted to prepare boilers and chimneys. It was elements that were in all the factories, and producers, British producers, what they said is we will create an innovation system where we improve the boilers and we improve the size and the materials, all types of progress that will improve the industry. And with the improvement in the industry, we will be able to sell more boilers and more chimneys. And all England producers, they made that agreement that none of them would take advantage of technologies for themselves with a patent, and they won't make it an industrial secret. All technologies would be available for everyone, and everyone would take advantage of this, because boilers and chimneys were fundamental. Okay, thank you. Anyone else has questions? Thank you very much. The discussion has been very interesting. I would like to hear your comments about instrumentalization of open innovation. On the one hand, in Colombia, I think there are many companies and universities talking about open innovation, and there is a number of instruments: acceleration, incubation, venture client, corporate venture capital. And I would like to hear how, in general, you've seen what can be more effective in order to achieve these things that you mentioned in your examples. And strategy and methods for open innovation, and from the legal point of view, the legal instruments and financial instruments that you can use, or maybe you've seen things that you have seen more commonly used. And as Guillermo said this morning, with securitization of contracts, that is sophisticated, and I think that in Latin America it hasn't happened much, but perhaps you have seen other instruments. Sometimes we have problems with the universities in have a safe, a convertible note instead of licensing. The thing with open innovation, this I will speak about that tomorrow. It's a word that is very soft. It doesn't carry weight. And usually in Latin America and in Spain, I work with these regions, innovation equals marketing. Our innovation team is marketing, and I didn't understand why. So open innovation in big companies, the scenario is suspicious, because big companies, they are efficiency machines, cash flow investors every day. This is what they do, and that's it. So who is responsible for doing something different? Who is doing the research and learning? And they have the opportunity, and you do it independently with a startup, with a license. So open innovation in big corporations, there are examples. Yes, Procter & Gamble invented connected development, but this is a brutal marketing machine. They do market studies and not manufacturing. Maybe they have specialized teams, but there is a company phenotype, they are good at open innovation. We have to understand why. And I think the reason is based on that. The fast development of marketing or markets. Venture capital, corporate venture, what I've seen is that when things are okay, companies are very happy and they want to give money for innovation. But when they are tied with money, that's the first thing that goes away. One is Repsol. They purchased a big company in Canada. The company belonged to tar sands or were of tar sands. And when the price dropped, Repsol started to have financial problems. Consulting group went to Repsol and they decided to eliminate a third of the payroll of the innovation center, and all the contacts in open innovation they stopped. So corporations, so we have to see them with caution, because innovation through investors and investment is important, because who's making the investment? The innovation, I'm sorry, the professor, the student, who's funding? Well, the people who have money, investors, corporate venture, that's fine. You can have somebody from corporate venture in your company, but you have to understand why you have them and for how long they are going to support you. And this has to be very clear, because the financial person, they have the strategy in their business plan. Corporate, they have a double agenda, and if you don't understand the strategic point of view, well, you have vulnerability. And in terms of instruments, safe this the safe, I think sometimes it's used, it's called a safe agreement for future equity. This is an agreement for future shares. This means that you will have an appreciation soon in 1 or 1.5 years. Some people invest in safe and they spend 5 years with the safe standing. You don't outstanding. You don't know when this is going to be converted into money. So it's there is no formula that you can say this works. It depends on how you structure and who are you dealing with. The cases that I have seen are protocols that take into consideration all the phases of the innovation process. In general terms, they have modification clauses, because it's very difficult to have a precise regulation. It's a very dynamic reality. Normally, there is a clear delimitation of everyone's activity. What is the contribution? Clearly, you see who's gonna give the financial contribution, who's gonna give the jobs, who's going to give it existing technology, and then there are phases established where the parties have to get together to have an evaluation as to where they are, where is the research going, and what is the progress made, so that eventually they can make decisions about modifications. And these are contracts that they establish clauses that you have to constantly modify things if the needs in progress in technology requires that. What is fundamental in this case, in this type of contract, is determination of
Who are going to be the ones that are going to be the owners of the results of this intellectual property? So, what participation each one is going to have, what rights are they going to hold? There's going to be the co-ownership sorts of the patent. If they're going to exclusively have a right for licensing, what type of license are they going to have? In general terms, these contracts are indeed very large books that have an enormous level of complexity and that pretend to leave nothing unregulated, but at the same time hope to have the level of flexibility to adapt to any change that may take place as they move forward. And for that, this rebus istativus clause is established, just the possibility to modify contractual parameters in service of the progress of the project of open innovation. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you to both, and thank you to all.